With Luocha's banner coming soon in a few days, as we're recording this video, it was revealed in the update trailer that Yukong was going to come in Luocha's banner, and Yukong seems really good, as her buffs are outright monumental. You get a lot of attack percent buffs, you get crit rate and crit damage from her ult, which crit rate is not even something Bronya gives you. So, yeah, but the problem is that Yukong is actually incredibly difficult to build for, and use. So yeah, let me explain. With Yukong's kit, I'm not gonna explain her basic attack because all of them are the same until we get to her talent. But when I get there, I'll talk about it. Starting off with Yukong's skill, it gives 2 stacks of roaring bowstrings, which increases the attack of all allies by a massive 70% at level 8. This is even bigger than Asta's attack boost that requires 5 enemies or, 3 plus enemies that have fire weakness. But roaring bowstring stacks fade, 1 stack fades, when an ally's turn ends, which really makes it difficult to build her, because you are required to modulate your speed to make Yukong act before the damage dealer, so you could buff the damage dealer. And the buff fading after 2 ally turns ending means an extremely small buff window. Now you're probably saying, oh, it's just like Bronya. You get a massive damage boost after you use skill and you make the damage dealer go after. The problem is that your damage dealer is almost always going to be faster than Yukong, which makes it really disadvantageous to make Yukong just go straight up faster. But Bronya, on the other hand, Bronya can be slower than the damage dealer and benefit the damage dealer because you can give your damage dealer a second turn. And not to mention, an extra turn means twice the amount of damage because you're acting twice, which no matter how monumental Yukong's buffs are, it will still lose to an extra turn. Not to mention Bronya has a 50% damage bonus buff when she uses her skill on an ally. And both also use a skill every turn, but Bronya, you just get way more out of it than Yukong does. Next, with Yukong's ultimate, on use, allies' crit rate and crit damage is increased by 26.5% and 58.5% at level 8, respectively. And this is a big if Roaring Bowstrings is active. And as it targets enemies, it doesn't benefit from Bronya's best in slot light cone or even past in the future, which means you still need speed modulation even more. And it being a 130 energy cost is on the steeper side of ultimates. With Yukong's talent, it increases her basic attack motion value, so basically the base ratio, and doubles the damage it does to the toughness meter. Now, while it does seem pretty okay, the problem is that it's useless because you never want a normal attack. You always want to use skill because roaring bowstrings fade every time allies end their turn, so you always want to have your skill up. So there's no time for you to really normal attack. With Yukong's Ascension traces, they're really not good. Ascension 2 resists 1 debuff application once with a cooldown of 2 turns. It's good, but Yukong doesn't really do much to warrant it. Ascension 4 increases team imaginary damage by 12%, and there's no other imaginary characters that do damage other than Welt, which makes it very niche. And Ascension 6, you regenerate 2 energy when an ally takes action, which gives you a maximum of 4 freaking energy. Are you kidding me? 4 energy? It's 4 energy because it's only active when Roaring Bowstrings is active. So, yikes. You can get it up to a massive 6 energy when you get C6 or E6. But it's like, yeah, sure, bro. With Yukong's Eidolons, they're kinda bad. At E1, at the start of the battle, the entire team gets 10% increase in speed for 2 turns only. So after those 2 turns, her E1 is dead. At E2, she regenerates 5 energy when an ally's ult meter fills, and it's once per each ally. And it can be reset by using ultimate. So, for example, if you use Natasha's ult, if you fill up Natasha's ult, Yukong gets 5 energy. If Natasha uses her ult and refills her energy back up to 100%, Yukong won't get any extra energy. But if Yukong uses her ultimate, the next time Natasha would fill her energy, Yukong's E2 will activate to give her 5 energy back. And it's really far too slow to be of any use because ult is a steep 130 energy. With E3, skill and basic attack levels increase. It's good in general because skill, that's where you want most of your damage to come from, I guess. And at E4, Yukong deals 30% more damage when Roaring Bowstrings is active. Okay. Yukong isn't supposed to do damage, and it will only buff ultimate damage because of E6. And outside of E6, you can't increase the damage of normal attack because normal attacks don't do damage, and normal attacking does mean you are skipping skill use. So what's the point? With E5, you get your talent level and ult levels up, which is kind of good, I guess. Like, it buffs your ult, but it's like, it's always beneficial. With E6, you gain 1 stack of Roaring Bowstrings on ult use. It does allow E4 to buff ult damage, but ult is expensive, being 130, as I mentioned before, and Yukong isn't supposed to do damage. And most importantly, it does allow control on who gets the bowstrings with the crit stats, but being locked on ult use means you get it once every few turns, which is not really consistent enough. Yukong's kit remains to me as extremely unwieldy because even if it's monumental with the buffs it gives, it's extremely hard to optimize for. The buff window is too short and is limited to the next 2 allies ending their turn to being buffed. Yukong has to be faster than the damage dealer of the team to have correct timing with the DPS. You could say, assuming Yukong is faster than your DPS, she's similar to Bronya. But the problem is, Bronya gives an extra turn along with a 57.75% damage increase at talent level 8, which is much more consistent and brings more damage for the SP cost. Because remember, an extra turn is doubling your damage numbers. Not to mention, Pass in the Future is easier to use with Bronya, including her Best in slot. Bronya also has a passive 10% team damage increase from her Ascension talent, which is given just by her existing, and it's not limited like Yukong's imaginary damage buff only. Pella has no SP cost and may even generate energy with enough speed. She also has a high uptime for her defense shred, but you already know Pella's busted. Tingyan has less attack buff compared to Yukong, but requires 1 SP every few turns to refresh her attack buff. Her ult also allows energy to be funneled into the DPS along with the damage increase it brings, but it gives you the flexibility of targeting other allies for a panic ult with Gepard, Natasha, for example. But 140 cost kind of makes it very, very steep. Now with Asta. Asta only has a slightly lesser attack buff, and it does require a lot of enemies or a few enemies with fire weakness, but it does allow everyone in the team to use the attack buff so long as Asta has full stacks. And she also brings a slight speed boost, which can be useful. With the short breakdown on all of the other harmonies, it does seem like all the other harmonies are much more underwhelming than Yukong, but you have to remember that all of these characters are much more consistent. And if there's anything I've learned over the years, it doesn't matter how strong anything you offer to the team is. If you can't consistently apply it, what's the point? It's much better to have something that's weaker overall, but have something much more consistent. Like, Yukong is... her thing, she's so restrictive, and she's not even that good. She doesn't have anything that makes her super, super crazy. Maybe if she had extremely low energy costs. If she had 100 energy costs and she could regenerate a lot of energy like Pella, okay, I would see how good Yukong could be, where you're just spamming skill and then you're spamming ult. But like, eh, I I don't see it. I don't see why you really want to have Yukong anyways. And that's gonna be it for me. If you made it this far, thanks. See y'all later. Bye.